Welcome, my fellow Borderlands nerds. Today, we're doing a Borderlands 4 video. And that's right, I said Borderlands 4. Borderlands 4 is releasing next Friday, which is freaking crazy. I'm so excited for this game. So I've been build crafting, of course. Today, we're going over a Rafa build guide. I've cooked up what I think will at least be a fun build. I'm not sure how strong it'll be compared to other things. I've seen some crazy things that you could do with Rafa, but I've noticed that there are a few interesting skill points, and so I've kind of built around them. So I put together this build planner in max roll. The goal of the build is to have infinite ammo as often as possible. This kind of revolves around this passive here. When Rafa activates or re-triggers an action skill, his gun consumes no ammo, and this lasts for 2 seconds. We're getting 6 seconds of unlimited ammo during every cast of Apophis Lance, assuming that we only have 3 charges. So the goal of the build is to maximize infinite ammo and reduce cooldown time. So we're going into fire rate, we're going into a lot of cooldown rate reduction. We're going into these couple of skills that increase the damage of the first shot fired from a fully loaded weapon magazine. Assuming that this works like it has in other Borderlands games, that means infinite ammo will work with this. I'm going to go through this skill tree and break down skill by skill with a little bit of decision making behind it all. Rafa has this passive called Overdrive. When Rafa activates an action skill, he enters Overdrive. While an action skill is active, Overdrive's duration does not decrease. While Overdrive is active, gain increased move speed and deal increased damage with all sources. This lasts for 12 seconds. With this build, we should be able to maintain 100% uptime on Overdrive, and that's going to mean a couple of things for this build, but at the very least, it's going to mean we're going to have increased move speed, and we're going to have increased damage. So let's start here with the Apophis Lance skill tree. Of course, for our action skill, we're grabbing Apophis Lance. I'll explain our augments once I finish the skills. Our first skill, Rinse. Rafa gains increased reload speed. I'm only grabbing this so that I can come down to here. Preparado, and this gains increased action skill cooldown rate every time you reload your gun. And this stacks up to 100, which I think is kind of insane. As long as you're reloading once every 8 seconds, you should be able to maintain uptime on this and constantly keep stacking it. What I'm concerned of is, do you need to be in combat to stack these? Because if not, then you can just be reload spamming outside of combat to have high uptime on this, and just make sure that you're maintaining it in combat instead of focusing on stacking it in combat. If it is the case that you can stack this outside of combat, you'll have a lot of action skill rate cooldown for free. The next skill, the Thrill, is an overdrive skill, which means that this skill benefits more when having Rafa's passive overdrive active. This skill specifically increases your fire rate, and it increases more when overdrive is active. Since the goal is to have unlimited ammo, infinite ammo, then having increased fire rate will be great to maximize the amount of damage that we can get from that small window of time that we have infinite ammo. And obviously we don't care about our ammo economy during that window, since ideally we're only shooting when we have infinite ammo. The next skill is Ariba. This is a kill skill. When Rafa kills an enemy, he gains increased ordnance cooldown rate. This is just going to be a little nice to have more than guns and action skill around in the build. This build won't really revolve around ordnance damage, so this is not really necessary, but it does let us increase our action skill cooldown rate even more with the next skill, Abajo. I don't know how to pronounce this. I don't speak Spanish. Sorry. After throwing a grenade, we gain increased action skill cooldown rate. This is another small multiplier, but I promise all of it compounds. We have action skill cooldown rate in a lot of small different places in this build. And of course, we have metal management here. When Rafa activates or re-triggers an action skill, his gun consumes no ammo for 2 seconds. And then we have first impression. The first shot fired from a fully loaded weapon magazine gains increased damage. With all of these points invested in this skill, it'll be around 40% damage. Next, we're going down into the far right branch of this tree. We're getting 5 points of Jack. Whenever Rafa damages an enemy with a skill, he gains a stack of Jack. For every stack, he gains increased overdrive bonuses. Whenever overdrive ends, lose all stacks. So if we're able to maintain these stacks, we can increase all of our bonuses that we're getting. So far, the only overdrive bonuses that I've mentioned are the thrill, which increases our fire rate, and then the actual overdrive benefit, which is move speed and damage. Later on, we might see a little more, and if you do, then just remember that overdrive benefits us a little more now. This skill Jack builds into mate. When overdrive ends, convert all Jack stacks into mate stacks. Gain increased action skill cooldown rate for every stack of mate. Once Rafa's action skill is ready, lose all stacks of mate. So we have another form of getting cooldown right here. This is going to be another small thing, but since it stacks, you can have a lot of cooldown right here. But we're not really relying on our action skill to do a ton of damage, but we can expect to cast it a lot. And so maybe if you are in positions where you could just spam and hit a lot of enemies with your action skill, then you have more of an opportunity to get it back even faster. Next, we have Deadline. This is another overdrive skill, which increases our fire rate and reload speed even more. Both of these, again, benefit from Jack. Those are the skill points in this tree. Let's move over to Peacebreaker Cannons. Starting off here, we have Deft Hands. Rafa and his Peacebreaker Cannons gain increased fire rate. Again, for the same reasons as before, we want more fire rate, more bullets. During infinite ammo means more damage. We have 2 points here in, I don't know how to pronounce this again, CDR, to increase our gun damage. We just kind of had extra points in the next row here that didn't have a ton of great places to be put. So we're never complaining about gun damage. So 10% is good. Next, we have Field Repairs. Whenever Rafa activates an action skill, restore a portion of his maximum shield capacity. If his shields are already full, gain overshield instead. With 3 points in this skill, we're restoring 45% of our shields on every action skill cast. And ideally, we're casting it often, so this is going to help us with survivability. There's not a ton of places where I've invested skill points into survivability. Next, we have Resiliencia. This is another overdrive skill, and Rafa gains increased damage reduction while overdrive is active. Damage reduction is going to be really nice to just have if we can maintain overdrive at 100%. Especially with 5 points in this skill, that means we're going to have 40% damage reduction, and that's just going to be really nice for our survivability. This is another reason why I didn't feel like we needed to put points into like healing or gaining shields or overshields. Between these two skills, our survivability should be good in most cases. I'm not sure if this is going to change when the game actually drops, and we'll have some more time to test it. So if that does, keep an eye out on the planner. The planner will change as I start messing around with Rafa in the actual game. This is our last set of points, and this is really the only reason why we went down this skill tree. There's a lot of nice things throughout the skill tree, but this is the biggest reason. Vitriol, the first shot fired from Rafa's fully loaded magazine deals bonus corrosive damage, and maybe the element doesn't particularly matter to us here, but this is another 55% bonus damage on the first shot of our fully loaded magazine. So Vitriol and First Impression here give us a ton of increased damage in our first shot, and usually you might think that because it's only one shot, this would probably be best for a sniper, but since Rafa does have this passive that allows us to not consume ammo for a period of time, we're going to be abusing this combination to ideally shoot with these damage buffs up all the time. And then for our capstone and augment, I'll go over our augment first. Whenever Rafa consumes a charge, he gains increased action skill cooldown rate. This bonus is increased for every charge consumed. Cooldown rate plus 25% per charge consumed. And remember, our action skill has 3 charges, so this goes up to 75% action skill cooldown rate, which is huge. And really the biggest reason why we're going to be able to have a lot of uptime on Apophis Lance. And then our capstone is going to be Project Gorgon. Apophis Lance's weapon is replaced with an incendiary laser that pierces enemies. Pressing and holding M2 causes the laser to deal increased damage and chain to more enemies as it consumes charges. To be honest, this capstone doesn't particularly synergize with the rest of this build, but we have more coverage on elements. Right now we're doing guaranteed corrosive damage on our first bullet in the mag, and now we're doing incendiary damage with our action skill. Element doesn't really matter here, but we're just grabbing it just to grab it. All right, and then I actually want to talk a little bit about the action skill cooldown calculation. I kind of broke it down. Looking at all of the skills that we invested points in our skill tree, we have about 4 different skills. Abajo, which reduces the action skill cooldown rate on grenade throw by 7%. Preparado, which reduces our action skill cooldown rate on reload by 8%. per reload that stacks up to 100. Mate, which reduces our action skill cooldown rate per enemy damaged by action skill by 6%. Our augment, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this one, but this reduces our action skill cooldown rate on action skill charge consumption, and this stacks up to 75%. That's the big one. So I calculated the action skill cooldown given all of these skill modifiers, and we're able to reduce Apophis Lance's cooldown from 18 seconds down to around 3 seconds. And this is assuming kind of the least in the abilities that you're able to stack up, except for our augment. I'm assuming that you're able to use all 3 of your charges and maintain 75% action skill cooldown rate. Otherwise, everything was just assumed to be at 1 stack, and that math comes out to just over 3 seconds for action skill cooldown rate. So if we're looking at this from an uptime lens, I would estimate that you're going to be using Apophis Lance for about 8 to 14 seconds, and you're going to have downtime for maybe 3 to 5 seconds. So there will definitely be more uptime than downtime on this skill, which means that we're able to maintain all of the buffs for our fire rate, our gun damage, our reload speed, and also our damage reduction, which is going to be really, really important. The gameplay cycle that I'm imagining for this build is that you want to use action skill charges one at a time so that you maximize infinite ammo. So you want to cast your action skill, use a charge of Apophis Lance, and then shoot for 2 seconds, maximizing the infinite ammo, but then also maximizing the bonus damage that we're getting on our first bullet of the magazine. Once the infinite ammo ends from the first charge, then you want to cycle back and then use your action skill again and then keep looping. You also want to ensure that you're hitting as many enemies as you can with your action skill to reduce your action skill cooldown even more. Once you run out of charges, you want to prioritize reloading your gun and using your ordnance to increase your action skill cooldown. And then from there, you just rinse and repeat and spam out a ton of bullets. This build obviously is going to be very gun dependent, and no one really knows what's going to be good or not at the end game yet. So weapon wise, I would just put in whatever you feel like finding or whatever you feel like putting in or whatever you find and roll with that. But I would recommend you want to use a weapon that eats bullets. Ideally, you want to use a gun that shoots multiple bullets per shot and has a high reload speed so that we have less downtime shooting the gun. Obviously, we will have infinite ammo while we have our action skill active, but there is going to be a little bit of time in between, depending on how efficient you are at cycling all of your abilities. I mean, otherwise, I think that's about it for the build, guys. If you guys end up using it, let me know what you guys think. If you have any critiques or criticisms or recommendations or any feedback, be interested to change. But I'd also love to hear if you guys all have any of your own builds going, and I'd be curious to see what characters you guys are interested in, what builds you have running, what theory crafts you guys have going. Obviously, this is only the skill tree breakdown. We don't know what the sandbox is going to look like in terms of weapons, in terms of class mod, in terms of our gear bonuses. So all of this is very limited build crafting, but I think this build will have a lot of potential since it's not really relying on anything in particular except for guns. Well, anyway, guys, that was the build. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.